Wednesday, July 2024 meeting of the Norwalk Planning and Zoning Commission. Steve, let's start with a roll call.
Sure. Mr. Williams,
Here.
Ms. Tabachnik,
Here.
Ms. Jordan Byron,
Present.
excuse me, Ms. Lankowski. I'll come back, or just in case, Ms. Lankowski, if you couldn't hear. She's here, but having audio problems.
Right.
Ms. Wells,
Here.
Mr. Bryce,
Here.
Mr. Patches.
Here.
And Mr. Schulman.
Here.
Okay.
Diana, can you hear us? You're muted. Just click on mute at the bottom left of your screen. There you go. Oh,
Still muted.
I'm sorry, Lou. It's a different computer. I'm not used to it. Okay.
but that's okay. You're working fine now.
Okay, thank you.
I am going to seat everyone this evening. Mr. Patches, Ms. Langowski, and Ms. Tabachnik. So everyone who's here with us this evening can participate fully. We have as our first item a public hearing, but I'd like instead to get this item with Public Works out of the way. And that's under discussion, Philo Street Scenic Road Improvements, discussion with the Department of Public Works. Steve, is there someone here from Public Works?
I I'm looking, I don't see, I thought Vanessa Valadares would be here, but I don't see her name on my screen.
I don't either.
So I would recommend maybe going with the public hearing and then I'll text her, and when she pops on, we can slot her in.
Okay, that's
I
fine.
do see in our attendees that Jim Maheen from DPW is one of our attendees, not one of the panelists. I'm not sure if they'd be representing this project or not.
That's a good question. We can move him over, Michelle, maybe, and see if he can.
Just moved him over.
Great.
And apologize, I realize it's Meehan, not Maheen. I read it backwards.
That's fine.
Hello.
Jim, are you going to represent the department in the Philo Street matter?
Yes, yes, I
Okay.
am. Thank you for getting me on there. Sorry, I was trying to get a hold. So,
The floor is yours.
thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. So, basically, as most of you know, the Department of Public Works, we have a standard paving contract we do every year. We pave our roads. Much of it is just basically maintenance. After a road deteriorates, we just have to repair it. We don't want to have things going into disrepair. As it turns out, Philo Street just happened to be on this year's paving forecast. It's been planned for a couple of years ago, and I must confess that we only recently we found out that Philo Street is in fact a scenic road. So we just we wanted to sort of classify that and see how we're going to go about this, because basically the plan for Philo Street within the area is basically just to pave the area, repair the standard mill and pave that we normally do. We do have to, as part of our normal procedure, we upgrade all of our pedestrian ramps. We have to do that by federal guidelines. It's not a question of trying to urbanize the area or trying to do this. We just have to follow standard protocol as the Federal Highway Administration requires us to do for ADA compliance. And with that, we were looking to also replace existing sidewalks and a small connection between the two existing areas. So we were hoping to be able to, as construction is set to go pretty soon, our crews are actually out there ready to.
Jim, you've frozen. Jim, it looks like you may be back.
Hi, okay, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know what happened there, a bad connection, but, yeah, so anyway, we were hoping to, be approved to go ahead and do the standard repairs on Phyllis Street that we would, like to undertake at this time, that we're scheduled to undertake at this time, so.
Jim, can you explain to us why we have any role in this at all?
Well,
What the fact that it's a scenic road has to do with this?
yes, well, by the city ordinance, a scenic road has to have certain factors about any types of construction work being done. I mean, standard repairs, it does say in the city ordinance, hold on, I'll have to pull that up in a moment. Just give me, well, anyway, the gist of what the ordinance says is that for a scenic road, standard repairs are acceptable. If you're just simply repairing something that's going to be used as is, but any type of buildup, I forgot how they phrase it, something to the effect of something astronomical buildup that would sort of take away its scenic designation, has to be approved, has to go out to a public, some sort of public committee for this. So that's why we're looking to, we don't see that what we're doing over here, we're not looking to change the area, we're just looking to repair the area. Just repair it, and a part of that repair is paving. There's no major drainage work that needs to be done there. We're not looking to put up a bus stop in the area. We're not looking to do something that's going to undertake taking more vehicles onto the road. We're just looking to do the standard paving repair, and we do have to bring up our pedestrian ramps up to standard ADA standards, basically federal highway guideline standards. That's we're required to do that for every road. It's not a question that's something that we're looking to try to urbanize the area or something. So we will be replacing existing sidewalks with mostly asphalt sidewalks, and there is going to be a small connection of sidewalks, new of just a couple hundred feet to connect two separate sidewalks that to give people pedestrian access along to there. But other than that, there is no other particular work that's going to be done within the area.
Jim,
what
are
action-
you gonna
what a-
widen,
Well, go ahead.
are you gonna widen the sidewalks at all?
No, we're not
Very,
looking to
very
widen
narrow.
the sidewalks or widen.
Yeah, the sidewalks are super narrow. I doubt that
Okay,
the EDA.
Okay, well, I don't
approved-
know offhand the existing width of the sidewalks. I have to confess, I was not out there myself, but I do know that whenever we do sidewalks, whenever we rebuild sidewalks, they do have to also, just like our roadway pedestrian ramps, they have to be brought up to ADA standards. So
Good.
it is typical to do it up to 5 feet. In certain situations, you're allowed to go down to 4 feet, but that has to fall in particular criteria for that. So so certainly any sidewalk that's too narrow to work on, we certainly would bring that up to usable standards.
Good, no, good, because they're very, very narrow and old and mostly impassable. You know,
Yes,
I
that's what
drive
we're
on
trying to
Phillip
do. So
every day.
yeah, no, so all the stuff we're not looking to urbanize anything. We're just looking to actually just bring things up to replace the existing sidewalks. There will be a small connection between two separate sidewalks, two locations. It's just a couple of 100 feet for that. But other than that, we will bring those up to standards to fall into federal highway guidelines. So we're hoping to just get the okay to go ahead to do this without going to a public committee for this.
All right, so what action are you looking for us to take this evening?
Well, it's by guidelines. It's supposed to.
Yeah, we're
supposed-
at state, Mr. Chairman, you do need to, you have to do a public hearing for the improvements that's required for the actual other aspect of it. But I don't think you're taking any action tonight.
Okay,
Can I ask one quick question?
sure, go ahead.
Thanks. Mr. Meehan, is there a plan to put a sign that indicates that it's a scenic road? As I was driving up and down it, I didn't notice any signage there. And so I didn't know, like, it was kind of surprised that this was scenic, and I don't know if it's worth calling out and like marking that it is, so that way other people are aware of it. But it was one of those that it kind of surprised me when I saw this.
All right. I had to, Mr. Bryce, I apologize. I had to confess, I don't know about I don't know about signs out there right now, and I don't know what plans. I mean, the fact that it's a scenic road kind of snuck up on us too. I mean, we were just planning to pave it because it just needed paving. And it's
Sure.
and the sidewalk, we needed to upgrade these up to current standards, but there was no plan to alter anything else, and you are permitted, just to emphasize what Steve was saying, you are permitted to go without a public hearing if it's just normal maintenance, which we thought it was. As to whether or not we're going to put signs up, I'll be honest with you, that's not something that Public Works, haven't done that before. I don't know if there are plans to. It certainly can be done if the committee thinks it's worth it, but I've never seen such a sign myself. I wouldn't know what it looks like, so.
The history,
I've seen
the
some in
history of
Wilton, but-
this, the history of this is, Chapin, is that, you know, about 25 years ago, a group of people in the West Norwalk wanted it designated as a scenic road so it could never be widened. It's a very narrow 2-lane road that's twisty turny, but it's the only connection between, you know, between here and there.
Yeah,
We're not
And-
widening it.
Right. No, I understand.
okay.
I understand that. But the whole purpose was to sort of freeze it in time so that it couldn't be changed. But
Gotcha.
as part of that, it's at this point pretty dangerous, you know, because there are trucks trying to maneuver on this little thin road. And, you know, I've almost been hit there, hit on several, you know, numerous times. I don't know if you drive it very often, but I end up driving it almost every day.
So are you saying there's no pull off to take a picture with your family on the scenic road? I drive it often and I haven't ever, I mean, it's pretty, but I've never thought to take a picture.
Well, no, it's not.
It's
get-
not a scenic view. It's like, a lot of times in more rural areas that will do that with like dirt roads that have like
Uh-huh.
certain aesthetic with stone walls and big trees, and they want to preserve that look.
Yeah, so that's what happened there. And the sidewalks are like 2 feet wide. They're tiny, tiny little sidewalks.
All right, Steve, what I'm hearing from you is different from what I'm hearing from Jim. You're saying we need to hold a public hearing. Jim seems to be suggesting we don't have to.
Well, I'm sorry, just to clarify, but by the code itself, a public hearing would need to be if changes were being made, and our point is that we don't really see things as being actual changes. That's the one I'm trying to get. That's why we're respectfully requesting that we not be required to do that. I just want to say, well, I'm not contradicting Steve's requirement. I just want to say that the code says that it can be called to a public hearing if changes are to be made for this, and we're not really changing anything. We're just
If you're widening the sidewalks to be ADA compliant, is that considered a change? Or did the change only occur within the right of way of the street?
To be honest, that's kind of up to you guys, really, to kind of just say it's not. I mean, you're just making, by widening, you're just making something functional. You're not really putting up a rest area for people to stand in. You're not putting a structure in there. You're just using something that's just not usable at the moment and just making it usable. That there's something that's already there, you know. So
Basically just bringing it up to code, right?
yeah, basically based on federal highway codes for sidewalks, not just by city standards, but by federal highway guidelines, with ADA are different now than they were even 20 years ago. So let alone 40 or 50 when this area was probably designated. So
Diana, you had a question?
Well, I have a comment. One of the criteria for change was not only widening, but it was also straightening the road. Now, technically, what you're doing in a few places, you're actually narrowing the road and you're making the sidewalks bigger on the south side of the curve, but you're also straightening the road out in a couple of places. So I would think technically that might trigger the requirement.
I have to confess, I'm not familiar offhand with about. I'm looking at the drawings now. I don't
Okay, it's
see.
between Philo and Bet Marley.
Hold on one second here. Perhaps that's the sidewalk listing over there. Hold on, let me just pull up a
So we-
separate drawing here.
Did we pull it up on the share?
It's a good idea.
Let me just find the.
Rather than prolong this conversation. What if we have Steve work with the law department and DPW to determine whether a public hearing is necessary? And if it is, put it into our meeting schedule.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, there was, Brian did communicate with Matt Sapienza from the law department. And Matt's just reading, I just read his email again, and basically he kind of said it was up to you. His cautionary note was that probably the safest bet is to hold a hearing on that. I know DPW is looking to do like the handicap ramps, which I would think if you have sidewalks, you need to have handicap ramps. I think that's kind of the law. But the safer bet is they're going to go ahead and do any other changes. Probably safest thing to do is hold a hearing. We can do it next month. That shouldn't be that much of a problem.
Okay. Any comment on that?
Well, I would respectfully request, based on, to understand what Steve says, if a public hearing is going to be called for, could we do it as soon as possible? Because we do have a construction schedule to fulfill, but also, are we able to, could we at least get the go-ahead to what Steve said, to put the pedestrian ramps in? Because that would at least help us get going with this project.
Well, in terms of when we hold the public hearing, the soonest we can do it is our next meeting. And that's scheduled for August 7th.
Yep.
Would that adhere to your schedule? Is that?
Well, we'll make whatever work. I mean, that's if that's what it's going to be, then yes.
I would say, you know, I understand there's the ordinance. I'm not trying to minimize that, but I think at a minimum, putting in the ramps is something with ADA laws, a federal law, that would seem like a worthy endeavor, regardless of the scenic road designation. So, you know, moving that, at least that piece forward, because that's, you know, usually notice when you go around and they're working on road improvements, a lot of times they do the ramps first, and then they go ahead and do the rest of the sidewalk and the road. So that kind of allows everybody to kind of move forward and still gets the public the opportunity to comment on any other aspects of the improvements.
Just construction wise, that is the normal procedure first, because that has to go down before the asphalt goes in.
Is there any objection to that? I mean, this whole idea of a public hearing over this road seems a little silly, but that's just my opinion.
It also seems like that's why they got it designated a scenic road in the first place, to make sure that either it wasn't changed or that they could have a voice in the changes, right?
Right.
Is
Okay.
there anything that would come up at a public hearing that would change? Like, is this plan sort of baked based on federal requirements, or?
Well, again, as I said, Phyllis Street just falls into our agenda for this year to do paving, like all of our other roads. We have, once in a while, we do have to pave. Every road needs to be paved, needs to be maintained. And once we maintain it, once we pave it, we do have to bring certain things up to particular federal highway guidelines, and especially as it regards to pedestrians. It's just something that we have to do. We were not.
I was just wondering if there's anything that could be said at a public hearing that would actually change what happens.
Yeah, and ultimately it's not, I don't think, I'm kind of thinking of this a little bit like it's an 824 referral,
Mhm.
where you guys are just, you're not the final say in this, so it does have to go back through council. So I think it'd be something if like you gave a negative report, it might, you know, either A, required additional votes from council to get it through, or cause them to rethink the plan. But I don't think it's you guys saying, if you guys said we don't like it for whatever reason, I don't think it would kill the project.
All right, let's move forward then with the public hearing, with the acknowledgement that the city is going to move forward with handicapped access in the interim. Let's just do a show of hands on that to see if we're all in agreement. I'm not sure we need to take formal action. From what I can see, it looks like it's unanimous. So go ahead with your work to serve the handicapped, and we'll see you or another representative from the department on August 7th for a public hearing.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. To move on, our original first item, 2024-34 SP/CAM, Jonathan Walk, 84 Bluff Avenue, District 6, Block 15, Lot 5, proposed fill, and I don't know the language here. It says fill and regarding within yard setbacks that exceed standards within section 6.2.2F, 0.7 and 8. This is a public hearing. The way in which we conduct our public hearings is the applicant will give a presentation regarding what it is they're looking to do. We can ask questions during that explanation. Once that is completed, we will open it up to any public comment. After everyone who wishes to speak has had an opportunity, we'll turn it back to the applicant for comments on what they've heard from the public. We ask if there are any members of public who wish to comment on this, that you keep your comments as brief as possible, while at the same time making sure you cover any issues that are important to you. And we ask for your name and address. When we get to public comment, Mr. Kleppen will explain how you can raise your hand to be recognized. With that, I assume that Mr. Flaherty, you represent the owner?
I do. Thank you much, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Craig Flaherty, Principal and Senior Engineer with Redness and Mead, land use consulting company with offices in Stamford and Wilton, here on behalf of the applicant tonight on what I hope is, in my perspective, a super simple application for the word was regrading of the side yard, the space between the home and the southerly property boundary. And there's a very good reason for that we'll get to, but it is a special permit and a public hearing, so I just want to make sure we're covering what we need to on our presentation. This is a simple aerial view from the Norwalk GIS system. I have the property highlighted in yellow on the west side of Bluff Avenue, just before the Bell Island Bridge. Importantly, this is 84 Bluff Avenue. It is adjacent to 86 Bluff Avenue, which received CAM and site plan approval from you about a year or so ago, and that actually precipitated the desire by the owner of 84 Bluff Avenue to do this regrading in the side yard, because the approval for 86 allowed this site to be elevated somewhat, as the new structure on the site will be compliant with the flood zone much higher. And so all Mr. Walk is attempting to do in his southerly side yard here, where my hand is bring up the grade to match the approved grade for the property next door, and eliminate what would otherwise be a retaining wall separating the properties. So there are 4 elements of notice that happen for this application and this hearing. First, when we file the special permit application, we send notice to neighbors that we have filed a special permit application. That was done on May 14th. Then once the hearing is scheduled, we send another notice to neighbors notifying them of the hearing date and the Zoom data. That was done by certified mail on June 26th. Your staff coordinated with the Norwalk Hour to make sure that notice of this public hearing was published on June 26th and July 3rd. And finally, A new piece of your regulations for public notice requires the applicant to place a large prominent sign on their property, noticing the time and date of the public hearing and the coordinates for participation. All of those have been done in accordance with your requirements and new regulations. So this is our site plan that we provided with the application. At the bottom of the screen, you see 86 Bluff Avenue. That's the neighbor's property. And here is Mr. Walk's house. The area of regrading is between the side yard. It just so happens when we first started thinking about this project, it was prior to the new effective regulations, and this project would have been approved over the counter with no further permitting necessary, but your new regulations have certain standards for how much fill you can place, how close to the property boundary, and how steep of a slope you can have close to a property boundary. So it turns out that the only way to do this project under the new regulations is to come to you for a special permit, but it is less than 50 cubic yards of material, which doesn't rise to a level that involves the Department of Public Works. We have so confirmed with the Department of Public Works twice that they don't need to be involved with the application. There is no change in hardscape, no additional impervious coverage. The drainage patterns are maintained. We have indicated silt fence and erosion controls on this plan to make sure that is covered, although this, if this takes a week, it's a lot. The one change to the house is that on the side yard, there are 3 flood vents that are used to equalize conditions between outside the house and inside the house in accordance with the flood regulations during times of extreme coastal flooding. Because we're filling the side yard, these 3 flood vents will be covered over, but we're adding 4 flood vents on the front as compensation. So although the structure complied with the flood zone regulations when it was built, it no longer complies with the current map because the flood elevations on the current map are higher, but we're maintaining the level of compliance that the house has today. That's the only change to the house. And as I said, there's no change in hardscape. I produced a little cross-section to explain the grading. Plan view on top, it's rotated this time with the neighbor's house on the right and Mr. Walk's house on the left. So we're going to take a section between the two. And the red line that I've drawn would be the grade once the neighbor is done with their construction, which is underway right now. And instead of having this kind of low alleyway between a new wall on their neighbor's property and their house, they're just trying to fill that up and have the same elevation in the side yard as the neighbor does. So that was just for additional explanation. We provided an architectural drawing and calculations of how the modifying the flood vents from the side to the front still maintain the level of flood compliance. But most importantly, we also provided for the record a letter from the adjoining neighbor along which this work will be done. The Kerrs at 86 Bluff Avenue fully support the efforts of Mr. Walk to equalize his grade with theirs. This is a CAM app, so we provided a environmental CAM report that is in your record and a part of the application materials. But other than that, I've had an opportunity to review the suggested resolution that staff has prepared. Mostly, I think it's fine. I think there was some boilerplate on the conditions of approval that show up in a lot of your special permits that I don't think are necessary for the minor project that we're approving here. I've got those highlighted in number 2, 3, 5, and 6. I would request as you're deliberating the application, should you choose to vote in favor, that these conditions be eliminated. For instance, number 5, any conditions from WPCA, there is no WPCA review. There is no change in anything having to do with sewers here. That condition is unnecessary. Similarly, we've already confirmed twice via email with DPW that they do not need to be involved in the application. That kind of gets back to all department sign-offs prior to any zoning permits. There's also this clause here in item number 3 that says prior to occupancy. Well, the home is occupied and will continue to be occupied throughout this entire project. And lastly, given how quickly the project is and its minor nature, I felt that there was not a need to post a sediment erosion control bond prior to the zoning permit. So if you have any questions about those, I'm happy to answer them, but hopefully you will agree that those specific conditions 2, 3, 5, 6, and 8 aren't necessary given the specifics of this project. With that, that is the presentation. I'm happy to answer your questions.
A question not for you. Amelia, this is your project?
Michelle is working on this one.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Sorry, Michelle.
No worries.
Could you respond to the applicant's request to remove those items from the approval?
Sure. So I think some of the items he raised are good points, as during the process, he and Patrick, who also reviewed the project on his end, indicated about DPW review and WPCA. So I'm comfortable with suggesting removing those. But perhaps we keep, I think I'll just change the language for this zoning permit prior to occupancy and change that verbiage to prior to site construction, that they'll still have to get a zoning permit from us. And then that last one, trying to pull up mine.
Yeah, the erosion control bond.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Usually any site work like that, like the CAMs would have a bond in some cases, but it's up to you guys if you think that we should set a bond if there's any real concern about runoff or potential issues to the neighbors, that we would want to kind of hold something. But I'm either way on that one. If you guys want to remove it, I think it will be okay. But
And as a reminder, the immediately adjoining property, that site is fully under construction right now, with no house there.
All right, questions or comments from commission members? I mean, the concern here, in this new regulation we've adopted, is that we don't want people raising their property and causing problems for adjoining neighbors or neighbors down the street. And this certainly doesn't appear to do that. And correct me, Michelle, if I'm wrong, the staff has no objection to the work itself.
correct.
Okay. Could we then, if there are no questions, pull up the resolution?
Do you want to go to public?
Yeah, do we want to open it up to the public prior to the resolution, or?
No, I apologize. It's a second time in 2 meetings when I've done this. Yes, Mr. Flaherty, is there anything else you wish to say?
I'm ready.
Open
I'm
it
good.
up to the public.
I'm all set.
Are there any other questions from commission members? All right, if not, we'll close this portion of the presentation and see if there is anyone from the public who wishes to comment. Steve, you want to explain how people can raise their hand?
Sure. So at the bottom of your screen, there's the raise your hand function. We do have somebody dialed in by phone. So if you are on by phone, *9 to raise your hand, and then it would be *6 to speak if you so desired. No takers so far, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, let's just give it a moment. Mr. Flaherty, is this going to improve on the land, the view that these property owners have of the young kids jumping off the bridge?
It's cool. It's a cool little neighborhood activity. I don't think it does.
Again, raise your hand function at the bottom of the screen or *9 by phone if you want to speak to this application. No takers, Mr. Chairman.
All right, then we'll go back to Mr. Flaherty for any final comments.
I have none. Thank you for your time. I look forward to your consideration.
Okay, any final questions from the commission? Okay, I think this time it's all right for me to ask to pull up the resolution. Thank you, Michelle. All right, Michelle, can you go over those items that Mr. Flaherty asked us to look at?
Sure. So I didn't highlight it, but I just edited this. I said site work, or I guess I could do site improvement. I guess it doesn't really matter too much. If you guys are comfortable with that, just makes more sense since that was kind of an error on my end. And then I suggested crossing the WPCA DPW conditions, and then I guess I'll leave it up to you for the bond. I mean, I'm comfortable lifting it, suggesting to lift it, but I'll see what you guys think.
How significant is a bond in a small project like this?
I think it's more that well, I'm sorry, from my perspective as the applicant, it's more the just having to go through another hurdle of paperwork and process for
Okay.
what is a very short activity and has already required a lot of paperwork. One net under 1C, the spelling of redness is ISS.
Did the neighboring site have a bond?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure. They might have, because that was new construction. Ultimately, from the city perspective for the bonds, it's just really when issues arise, it's a good source that holds an applicant's feet by the fire if they want us to close out, if the neighbors are having issues and we feel kind of stuck. You can pull a bond and be able to utilize it, or just be able to have another mechanism to hold over an applicant if they aren't complying with the regulations. So in this case, I mean, it's pretty.
Yeah, I get that. I was just
Oh.
asking about the precedent of it, but I'm pretty indifferent on this as well. So
Yeah, the neighbor 86 was a full knockdown rebuild, scratch building new construction.
My only concern regarding the bond is whether we establish or are establishing a precedent which may come back to bite us at some later date. Steve, could you opine on that?
I don't think so, because what the work they're actually doing is leveling. So their grade's not, assuming they stick to their plan, their grade won't be higher than the neighbor's grade. So it's just kind of leveling it out. So there shouldn't be any runoff issues. So I think if somebody in the future had the exact same project, then I think you'd probably come to the same decision you come to on this one. But if they have if their work ends up with a sloping site, then you could say, no, we're concerned about the potential for runoff and we want the bonds. I think you just have to look at the circumstances with each project individually.
All right. Are we as a commission then comfortable with eliminating the requirement for a bond? Can we take this down, Steve, so I can see all the members? With a show of hands, is everyone comfortable with eliminating the bond?
I wouldn't mind just putting what Steve said into writing somewhere, just as because of the conditions of this, we're removing it. I don't know. I don't know if that's too paranoid on the precedent, but I'm okay with removing it.
Well, we have it in the record, Chapin, in any case, because we've just discussed it.
Great, yep, that works.
Okay, all right, so we'll remove the bond as well. Is there a motion to approve this document?
I move it.
Okay, Hector has moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Chapin seconds. Again, I think we can do this with a show of hands. All those in favor? That appears to be everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay. Thank you. Moving on, that is it for public hearings. Everything else is review and action on pending applications. The first 2021-32 SP, the Guru Teg Bahadur G Foundation, Inc., 283 Richards Avenue, extension of time request for the construction of a two-story Sikh religious center. Mr. Gulati, if you'd like to, if you would, show your face and it just explain the reason for the request for the extension.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we have requested this extension because, we had 1 year delay due to the appeal process, and then we started our fundraising process. So we have not adequately secured all the funds yet to go seek a construction permit yet. So we are in the process of fundraising.
Okay. This sounds pretty straightforward.
Yep.
Are there any questions of Mr. Gulati? If there are not, can I have a motion to approve a 1 year extension? Mr. Bryce has moved. Is there a
I can
second?
second that.
I'm sorry, who seconded? Oh, Hector Pachas has seconded. Again, I think we do this with a show of hands. All those in favor? Again, looks like it is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Gulati.
Thank you very much for your time.
Next item is 2022-24 to special permit CAM, Single-Walled Associates. No, I apologize. I got ahead of myself. 2022-24, again, special permit CAM, Mill Pond Holdings LLC, 1 Cemetery Street, facade review per conditions, 3.C-I, comma, II and III of approval. I assume that is Attorney Suchi or Mr.
That would be me, Mr. Commissioner, Henry
Okay.
Conroy.
Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Henry Conroy. I'm a representative from Mill Pond Holdings LLC. And I'm joined tonight by Colin Grothier from Vinefield Architecture. We're here to address a few specific conditions in our resolution related to the facade of the building at 1 Cemetery Street. As you mentioned, section 3.C.1, 2, and 3 were specifically brought up in the design review process to be addressed with the commission for your review and approval. I'll handle the first item, and then Colin Grothier will handle the remainder. Item 1 was that if required by CTDOT, a secondary right turn only exit shall be constructed within the Cemetery Street building facade. Final modifications to be reviewed and approved by the commission. We reached out to CTDOT in conjunction with Norwalk TNP, and the determination of DOT was that they did not support an additional right-hand turn out of the building. So I believe that condition has resolved itself. Colin, if you can share your screen, you can take us through the other 2 conditions.
Sure.
Unless there are any questions on item 1. None, then Colin, go ahead.
If I get this right tonight. Everybody see the,
Yes.
okay, wonderful. Just to kind of get back and recoup for everybody, this is the One Cemetery project located at the old Wells Fargo site in East Norwalk. I believe we kind of recall the approved elevations, hopefully. This is the northern elevation, which is the cemetery street. We broke it up into 4 main facades. We refer to those as the Italianate, the Mansion, the Three Sisters, and the Market Building. The comments were related to the upper story roof line connecting the Market Building and the westernmost Three Sisters, the upper story roof line connecting the Italianate building and the Mansion, a cupola atop the Market Building, and the Market Building to have some more discrete or distinct entry elements. This is around the back of the building, or the eastern facade, the Italianate and the rear oyster barn. We had some southerly facing elevation where you can see the oyster barn, the Italianate and the Market Building. And then the East Avenue facade, most prominent would be the Market Building, and then the oyster barn, and the remaining building that you're seeing here is stepped back substantially, about 100 feet or more from the street facade. So that's in the background and not prominent. Building B, which is kind of more towards Gregory Avenue, was not really under discussion. It hasn't really changed from the approval. So the proposed updates, the Italianate, not the oyster barn there, the Three Sisters and the Market Building, all in the Mansion, all still retain their general character and massing. Oyster barn and Italianate on this side didn't really change substantially. All, again, massing stayed the same. This is the southern facade. We didn't see any substantial changes there. And the eastern facade down below here, again, no real substantial changes in the overall elevation. Getting to the responses, the conditions, this just indicates that we had 3C3 here, 3C2 here, 3C4 and 3C5 related to the Market Building, covering those each individually. Yeah, and there was also, you had a 3C4 on the eastern elevation, sorry, western elevation, and 3C5 also on the western elevation. But very specifically, this is the slice between the Market Building and the Three Sisters. So this is what was approved. We had a pitched roof in this gap, and there's a passage that goes back to the public part of the courtyard that lets you transit from Cemetery Street through the building, through this covered passage to the public courtyard and back. So we revised that to kind of provide more definition between the Three Sisters and the Market Building, and kind of separate those roof lines and just give it a little bit more character. So we refined the window treatment there, the materials, and the archway composition a little bit. But the big move there was just going to a more flat cornice, more similar to the Three Sisters, and separating the roof line from the Market Building, which we feel like really accomplished that intent of reducing the massing and providing more distinct separation between the two buildings. The other comment was very similar, and this was something that we were wrestling with throughout the approval process, was kind of how to treat this element of the Italianate. We had more of a squarish tower element at one point. We were back and forth with the design reviewer, Bob Griswatz from DeCarlo and Dahl, a few times, and had a couple iterations of that. And finally, as the approval came through, we went back through and looked at it, and it came up with this composition, which is still essentially in the same plane, but we stepped the upper story back, changed the vocabulary a little bit, and brought the water table stone veneer up, and added in a third window down here. So the composition of the 3 windows is a little bit of a change from what was going on there before, and also the step back. So that really helps 3-dimensionally as well, to just break up the massing of those 2 facades and provide more spatial separation between the Mansion and the Italianate. And we feel that's a very a more successful intervention, and a good way to treat those 2 buildings. Helps that prominent corner as you're coming around Cemetery Street at the higher elevation and looking down at the facades, lets that Italianate corner read a little bit stronger than the roof line resolve, which was a tricky condition. So very happy with the way that worked out. Cupola was added. That was another design comment, not back for you as for approval, but just showing that we did pick that up. And then the same thing, we added canopies and entries at East Avenue and Cemetery Street at those locations. And I can just go back really quick to, so those canopies were also added at these two locations for the potential retail spaces there. And there is one on the courtyard facade as well. But just providing weather coverage to patrons of that space. And that's really the extent of the changes. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to cover those.
Questions? I have just a quick question. I see that you've raised up that stone facade. Are any of the lower sections of the buildings, are you using less resilient materials than you had originally proposed?
No, it's
Okay,
all
so
the materials are.
There's no cement panels, that sort of thing on the lower sections of the buildings?
No, the most of the trim work, decorative trim work is going to be likely to be composite wood material, so like an AZEK or a clear composite lumber product. The bases were always a veneered stone,
right,
for the most part. Let me go back to one of the other elevations. Especially on Cemetery Street, most of this is buffered with planters that are a durable material, and the actual facade is either elevated or stepped back. So definitely on the Cemetery Street, you've got more durable materials at your touch points as you wrap around to the into the site as you're coming into the parking again, up against the building. There's planters in place, so that keeps people back from the edge of the building. You do have fiber cement siding coming down to the planters, but that's not a walkable surface there. That's a planted surface, and not an uncommon condition for most buildings in downtown areas or residential properties. Around the entire back of the site, there's the stone veneer going up the whole first story. And then see the southern facade, all stone veneer coming around the back there. The majority of the other places where the fiber cement would be the private part of the courtyard. So that's not a public accessible space, and where the public does have access via circulation or for viewing enjoyment. There are planters against the building that do keep them back away from the edge there. The market building is a brick and stone veneer, so that's covered. And there is a little bit of fiber cement in the passageway, but again, that's not as hazardous a location. It's covered from the weather. You're not going to be shoveling snow in there or doing any kind of activities that should really take a lot of abuse on the siding. So somebody's going to want to have to intentionally damage the building, which you really can't. You can only do so much. So. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It's been quite a while since we approved this. Just a quick question. Has there been any further discussion with the city regarding access to the waterway and building that area out at all as a public space?
Henry, can you take that? I don't have any knowledge of those discussions.
Yes, that's the final one of the conditions per the resolution. I have not, I mean, Steve and I have been, discussing all the resolution items. We have money that would be allocated to give to the city per our condition. I think it's $25,000. But I have not heard that anything about the intention to continue that work, although, per the resolution, that money is available for that condition.
We did apply for a trails grant that we were unsuccessful for.
Mhm.
So we're gonna seek, but the city did get money for the Harbor Loop Trail. So we are gonna next grant round, we're gonna try to get seek that again.
Oh, good, good. Thank you. Are there any other questions?
I have a question that I'm trying to hold till later that's about the current construction, not necessarily about the architectural changes.
I'm sorry, Anna, I'm not following you.
I had a question for them about the current construction, not related to the architectural changes. So I'm happy to hold that till later. Or
This is the only time we're going to be discussing this, so I'd say if you've got a question, even if you feel
Okay.
it's unrelated, ask it.
sure, okay. I know it appeared that construction was stalled for a period of time at the site. I discussed this with Steve, but there's some additional things. While the construction was stalled, the bank had already come down and a lot of the ground had already been taken up, and there were big piles of dirt and pavement and whatever. Multiple times when there were heavy rains, the mill pond turned brown. And when I peeked through, as well as I could see, sometimes it's hard to see through those green things, a number of the silt fences were down. And I just wanted to ask if you were aware of that, make sure that they're getting checked, whatever it is, every day or after every rainstorm or before every rainstorm, I don't know, but we didn't used to have the mill pond turning brown like that from runoff before there was a humongous pile of dirt.
So to answer your question, we put all the sediment and erosion controls in place per the plan and per the approval of this commission. We check on it daily. I mean, because we're like daily, and we absolutely check on it during and after all rainstorms. I personally have lifted grates and cleared debris out of filter fabric just because I want to make sure that everything's operating appropriately, as well as Steve's office, the zoning department has been out there, I think after every rainstorm and multiple times a week to investigate on their own and with me as well. And we found that it seems that everything is working appropriately. I've checked the water levels to make sure that nothing is flowing over the site, as in not too much water is accumulating and running over the site and not getting into the catch basins. And we go out and maintain the catch basins, which have very heavy duty filter fabric in place on every single one where debris is collected. And then we remove that debris to ensure that water is still able to get through that area, but it's also ensuring that all of the debris is being captured and not getting into the catch basin and then dispersing to anywhere else on the site. I can't speak particularly to the brownness of the water. I know that happens around Norwalk, unfortunately, when there's a large rainstorm, and we did have a few really, really big ones, but if there's any other issues or concern, feel free to reach out, and we can adjust the sediment erosion control as is necessary. But we do have it on site, and we do have people who are hired to maintain it after every rainstorming and continuously. As far as the construction goes, we demolished the building, and we have some ground improvement work and site work to continue. I would say over the next 30 days, we'll be in full swing of construction up until the site is 100% complete. So there's normally a little bit delay between demolition because you can get that before you get your building permits. It's just kind of some of the process, but we're going to be in full construction going forward.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Okay, are there any further questions? If not, Steve, what are we looking for here? A resolution or simply an approval?
I think just an approval of the modifications that were the requirements for the
Okay,
prior approval.
okay. Can I have a motion to that effect? Oh, again, can we take down your picture so I can see the commission members? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Galen, you're muted.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
JJ? Okay, we have a second from Ms. Byron Jordan. Any discussion? Okay, if not, again, I think we can do this with a show of hands. All those in favor? Looks like it's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Have a
you.
good evening.
Okay, now back to single wall. 2024-28 SPR/CAM. The Single Walled Associates LLC, 3 and 7 Reynolds Street and 33 Fort Point Street, District 3, Block 3, Lot 7, 17 and 3. Proposed commercial vehicle storage use.
You may have to, Michelle, you may have to pull Attorney Blank over. He's,
Yes, I just did.
okay, thank you.
I think you can hear me. I don't, for some reason, my video, it's not allowing me to put
We
video.
can
Oh,
hear
there
you.
we go. They freed me.
We
All
can
right.
see, now we can see you.
I bet you wish you couldn't, but you gotta look at me anyway. All right, so good evening, Adam Blank. I'm the attorney for Advanced Lawn Ornamental Tree and Shrub Care LLC. With me tonight is Brian Carey of Land Tech. He did an environmental impact assessment on this property, and you'll hear from him shortly on that assessment. Additionally, Michael Sir, the principal owner of Advance, is also present. If he's not imported, if you guys can find him and bring Michael over, that would be appreciated. He's not going to present, but he certainly can answer questions that may arise. So Advanced, they're a family-owned and operated company. They specialize in turf grass management and the care of trees and shrubs. They've operated here in Norwalk for over 39 years. And about a year ago, they moved into, I guess it's 3 and 7 Reynolds Street and 33 Fort Point Street. There are tenants there. It's owned by Singwald Associates LLC. When they moved in, it's zoned light industrial and it's in the CAM zone. And they realized after they moved in that because it's in the CAM and they were technically changing the use from the existing use, which was the Norwalk linen, that it required what would have normally been an over-the-counter permit, but a CAM application. And that's what brings us here today. They want to make sure that they're sort of legalized for their use of the property. If I can share my screen. Are you able to see that? Doesn't look like it.
Nope, just you.
Okay, here we go. We're in business. Okay. All right. Now, can you see?
Yes.
All right, great. So the site, it's actually 3 properties. They're outlined here. You've got East Avenue up here, Fort Point and Reynolds. And then you've got all the sewage treatment plant. And here's the water. That's the resource we're trying to protect, and we're up here. This image you'll see, this is from DPW. It's their image, but it's the Norwalk Linen, they had a fire. This building was removed, is no longer there as a result of that fire, and that was made a parking lot some time ago. This is an undeveloped lot, and there's a sort of a warehouse building that's here.
Attorney Blake, I can't see your cursor at least. Do you mind just calling out which lots those are that you were referring to?
Oh, okay, sure.
Thank you.
The Zoom platform keeps changing it anyway. So on lot 3, there's no structure on that lot anymore. It's just a parking lot. The one that's numbered 33 has been and continues to be just a parking lot. And where the 7 is, that is where the structure is and remains. And this application, it literally is just a change in use. It's a change in tenant or tenant fit up. There's nothing's being built. There's no improvements being made, structurally to the property. There's a survey here. This also shows you the darkest gray area is where the building is. And then next to it, as you're looking at it to your left, there's the lot that is a parking lot. And then towards Fort Point, there's that third lot that's parking as well. So again, like I said, this was Norwalk Linen. They had a couple of fires. They closed the building. The main building was rebuilt. Just a lot remained where one of the structures had been. It's always been used for commercial purposes. And in fact, in the aerial, you can make out on lot 7 where the Norwalk Linen used to line the trucks at the front of their building up to Reynolds Street for their deliveries. The business that Advanced Lawn, their business, so it's ornamental tree and shrub applications. They do fertilizer, crabgrass, weed, insect control, grub prevention, tick. They do seeding and aeration, those types of things. They don't do mowing. They don't do like pruning and tree removal. They've got a fair number of trucks associated with their business that go out in the mornings. And the property is 3 and 33 are fenced in. 7 is not fenced in. And they do not store materials on the outside of their property. It's really just trucks that get stored outside the property, and any material storage is done inside the sort of warehouse building. The building itself is a 2-story building. This is a kind of an odd floor plan drawing, but where it says lot area, that's really just parking lot. And you'll see there's a few different warehouse sections of the building, a couple of bathrooms on the ground floor. And then on the second floor, there's office space for the owners of the building and a couple of their employees, storage, and an additional bathroom. And they do some maintenance of their equipment within that warehouse building. I'll show you. So just to give you a sense of, if you haven't been on Reynolds Street, so if you're standing in there in Advanced driveway, looking across the street, you've got 3 neighboring properties. This building that's in need of a little TLC and some landscaping is one neighbor across the street. Then they've got this warehousey building that has some machinery in the driveway, a whole bunch of cars, and a whole lot of car parts that you can't really make it out, but there's all sorts of parts and tires and stuff in their driveway next door. And then the third building across from us has all of their cars loaded up through the sidewalk onto the street. And as we look from our site, you can just make out on our site, there's a dumpster that we're looking at here. That dumpster is right up against our property line. It's not our dumpster, it's our neighbors. It goes over the sidewalk there. Our dumpster's in the back of the property. In the staff memo you got, there was a question or concern raised about us having a dumpster at the front. Our dumpster is at the back of the site, not at the front. That's the neighbors. As you look from the street at our warehouse building, I'm calling it a warehouse building, but the storage building, whatever you'd like to refer to it as. This is the building from the street. This parking area is for employees. There's no, like, customers don't come to the site. There's no retail component to the business. So employees can park here. Employees can also park where the commercial vehicles are stored in those other 2 lots, because as they remove the vehicle that they're going to be out for the day in, they can put their personal vehicle there. But we well exceed any parking requirements that exist. The company trucks, they go out. Let me just find. Let me skip down for a second. I'll come back. Actually, I'll just show you. So inside the warehouse, like, this is what it looks like currently. And it's, again, nothing's proposed to change. They've got their materials up off the ground. There's no floor drains in the building, so if there's ever a spill, it can be safely cleaned up without getting into the groundwater. So this, as you look from the street into their property, this, you see there's one big box truck. It says Advanced Lawn on it. That's the main parking area for their vehicles that go out. Those vehicles go out 5 or 6 days a week. They leave around 7:30 in the morning. They return around 4 p.m. at the end of the day. There's not a lot of, back and forth, in and out. It's usually just out and then returned. And the majority of the company's customers are Norwalk property owners. We do have sign-offs from DPW and TMP. The WPCA hasn't given us a formal sign-off yet, but the only question or concern they expressed to us was with respect to floor drains in the building, which, again, we don't have. So we expect a sign-off from them in the near future. Although this is because it's just we're not actually building anything, it's just a change in tenancy and a change in use. It's not clear that we need to make any site improvements because we're not changing the site. It's just a change in user. But we have in discussions with we have agreed to make some landscaping improvements. We don't have a landscaping plan, but we'll show you that some of these photos fairly briefly. There's a fair number of graveled areas at the front of the site. And we've agreed to take those graveled areas and plant them with native shrubs, perennials, and there's a couple of spots where we think we can plant additional trees, although there are some trees currently. So this gravel area here would get planted. This is looking back towards the building, and you can see there's a pretty large gravel area up towards the black fence where we think we can probably put a tree in there, and certainly some plantings, as well as up against the building. There's an island to the right side of this screen. Here's a better picture here. That same island that we can plant some additional shrubs. That large oak tree will remain. Then at the building, because it's a little complicated to try to redo the whole parking lot and tick up all the asphalt that's there. But we've agreed with the staff that we would put planter boxes in along the facade of the building. Obviously not where it would block entrance to those garage bay doors or the entrance or exits to the building, but we'll put in some planter boxes along the front of the building. And I know that Michael, the owner, when he gets through with the expense of this sort of initial project, I know the next thing on his list is to put awnings in. He's got the metal work up, but doesn't have the awnings in yet, but does intend to put awnings in on the buildings. And then this is the far end of the building where there's some gravel up along the sidewalk that can be also landscaped, potentially a tree there, but certainly some additional shrubs. So we think that between the plantings, us planting these graveled areas, as well as putting the planter boxes, that'll make it, honestly, it's the most attractive site on the street currently. And this is the landscaping is gonna make it by far and away the most attractive site on the block. So we hope that you'll find those upgrades acceptable. As far as the CAM related requirements, and that's really the only reason that we're here. It's not on the water. You see, you got the whole sewage treatment plant between us and the water. There's going to be no proposed changes to the building footprint or drainage. The CAM application and Mr. Carey's report make clear there'll be no impacts on coastal resources. I'd ask you to approve the application this evening, but I will ask Mr. Carey to give you a very brief summary of the findings in his report. Unless you have questions for me, we'll turn it over to Mr. Carey. Brian?
Yeah.
Well,
Sorry.
I do have a question in regards to how many people are employed in this building for this company?
So sort of a couple different questions. So one is how many are employed in the building, and he's got, I think it's him and 2 family members that come in and out. There's really only 2. They're really not employees. They're the owners, but there's 2 part-time employees that work inside the building. Michael, if Michael's on, I don't know how many are out on the trucks. Do we have Michael on here? Oh, I see he's muted. There you go, Michael.
I'm just curious as to the amount of cars that will take up space on this very narrow street.
So there's no cars on the street. It's actually illegal to be parked in the street. So as you saw there are a number of cars that are parked illegal. We park inside. You saw my daughter-in-law's car who runs my office. My white truck is there. Typically, I'm gone during the day also. And then you saw the other 2 pickups, and then the other vehicles, they belong to my 2 sons who work with me, as well as the employees. So as far as
there's sufficient parking space?
Oh, absolutely.
Spaces? Okay, where there won't be any overflow into the street?
No, never. No, there's only 2 girls in the office part-time, so to speak, my daughter-in-law and her best friend. I'm here in the morning. I'm not even usually here in the morning. I go out to work. My sons are in the truck full-time, so they come in the morning at anywhere from 6:30, and then they're going all day. They work in the trucks, as well as the other employees.
What type of trucks?
They're box trucks. They're what's called a cab over box truck, what's called a crew cab. It's got 4 doors. It's got a 14-foot box in the back, and that's where we store our equipment and our materials for our day's work.
Okay.
I'm sorry about my picture. I can't figure out how to like show you what I look like, but I can't seem to get myself up there. Sorry.
Playing with everyone today.
What time is operations?
So depending on the weather, like when it's very warm right now, we can start our days as early as 6:30. And then we're usually done by around 2 o'clock, 2:30. Normal work days, it's around 7:30, and we're done usually by about 3:30.
Okay, so there's no trucks bigger than the ones that you just mentioned, right?
No, those are our company trucks. That's how we operate. That's how we run the business. Those box trucks. That one you saw that's there, those are one of 4 that I have. That's all we operate with.
Mr. Steer, did you mention how many employees? Sorry if I missed that.
Yeah.
So there are 2 girls in the office that work part-time, and there are 10 employees. And if you want to minus my 2 kids, they're actually part owners with me. So there's anywhere from 10 to 12 employees.
Thank you.
Total.
In the staff memo, it says It says this should, on the first page, this should include increasing landscape areas in the front and removing non-compliant parking within the front setback since there is ample parking located behind the setback. So I guess my question is more for staff. If they have existing non-compliant parking in the front setback, but then you say there are no zoning violations currently on the property, I understand that maybe the staff didn't get around to issuing a zoning violation yet, but it sounds like a zoning violation that we're aware of. And what are the assurances that they're gonna stop doing that?
Oh.
So with the site plan review in front of you, when we take a look at the property and its existing conditions, in some cases when there's been permits pulled and previous tenants occupying the building and site, most often they can keep their parking and building as is when it's non-conforming. When the new application comes before us, we take a look at it. We want to bring it into full compliance, which were those comments. So yeah, you kind of got a part of it where it's when on our back end, we don't have any logged zoning violations for the property, but they do have a potential issue if somebody filed a complaint and said there's parking in the front setback or something like that, then we can take a look into it on permitting. So if it's existing non-conforming and stuff like that.
And so I would just add that that has been there and it pre-exists. The new zoning regs are new. If your property existed prior to those regs coming into play and was lawful under the old regs or the regs at the time that they went in, you do not need to bring your property up to the current code when you're just changing a use. It stays as is. And so we have that's why I think we've kind of agreed on what we would be willing to do, but it's pre-existing non-conforming, but it's legally compliant. That's important. It's not illegal. It's not a zoning violation. It's you can go across Norwalk and probably find most properties don't comply with the current zoning regs.
Yeah, I'm only worried about this property. Michelle, so are you saying that when it says removing non-compliant parking, it's not actually non-compliant because it's non-conforming?
Right. I mean, when
It's
Adam,
sorry,
Yeah.
sorry. It's legally non-conforming, but it's not compliant to the current code. So it's not illegal. That's which was what Attorney Blank was
It's not
saying.
compliant to the current code, but it's not non-compliant.
Yeah, so if it would be illegal if
Got it.
there was a permit issued 20 years ago and that was all landscaped and they decided to pave it and put parking there, that would be illegal, but that's not the case here.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Is there anything else?
Got a question. Staff had indicated that there was some documents that were still needed. I just wanted to see if staff feels that their comments have been addressed by the applicant.
yeah, Adam's group did give us the materials from other departments that was needed after we created the memo, so we're good on that end.
Yeah, and we're happy. I think we owe you a sealed survey. We're happy to have that as a condition of approval. I think that might have been one of the outstanding things, and obviously that we'll put in the landscaping that we've represented. Will do.
Sure, and I'm sure the employees would like having a little bit more shaded parking to park under while their trucks are sitting there all day. So
Absolutely.
Attorney Blank, anything else?
I think we were going to just let Brian real briefly. We don't want to belabor it, but just on the CAM.
Yeah, so I did do the CAM. I also did I was also hired to provide an environmental report in associated with Article 70, Section 118-700. Basically, the site is very well maintained. They do a great job of really keeping the inside and outside clean. There's no nuisance dust or fumes or odors being generated. Basically, all the waste is contained within the dumpsters. So there's not going to be any issues with rodents or anything that's going to cause an issue to the neighboring properties. That being said, we did have to do a CAM report, but again, based on the physical setting of the site and the proposed just change of use, there really isn't anything that would be a adverse impact associated with the proposal on any of the coastal management resources directly downgrading or adjacent to the property. There are actually no resources directly on site. But if the report we did submit for the CAM and the environmental report both state that there will be no impacts based on the proposal to either the coastal environment or nuisance environment to the neighbors.
Any questions? All right, again, back to you, Attorney Blank.
I think that's it. We appreciate your time.
Okay, we do have a resolution on this. Can we put it up?
One small typo is the last be it further resolved. We probably want to update that from July 5th.
Thank you, Chapin.
No problem.
All right, and was there an additional condition that we were going to add, or have you already added it?
So I had some language number 4 that the applicant submit a landscape plan for staff review prior to zoning permit. If there is anything you'd like to add, let me know.
Any comments from the commission members on the resolution?
I have a question for the owner before we make a motion, but if folks have comments on this, we can do that first.
No, go ahead.
And maybe this is for Attorney Blank. I'm not sure who, but I understood that there's a misunderstanding about like moving into this property and not knowing that a permit was needed. And I'm curious to know if there's like anything we can do to help better communicate that in the future, so that way, you know, folks know that they need to come forward and get this approved before moving in. Maybe I misunderstood the facts, but I think I recall that from one of the summaries.
Yeah. I don't know. I know that I don't. I think the owners has a very good real estate attorney who was able to spot this issue when the leasing was done for him. But I think a lot of guys, look, my suspicion is that 80% of similar businesses in Norwalk do not have permits. But part of that is that they don't know, but part of it too is that, you know, these are pretty small businesses that run on the margins, and this is not a insignificant expense to go through. So I think a lot of them elect not to go through that, knowing that they need a permit.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, back then to the resolution. Can I have a motion to approve the resolution?
I will make the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
This is Chapin.
Chapin has made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Darius has seconded. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, this is Tammy. I just want to let you know, I didn't arrive at the beginning of the presentation, so I will abstain from voting on this item.
Thank you, Tammy.
Welcome.
All right, well, we have a motion, we have a second. Steve, let's do a roll call on this one. This is
Certainly.
a motion to approve the project.
Sure, and I'll start with Ms. Jordan Byron. I think that was a yes.
I
Yes.
believe so.
Ms. Tabachnik,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Ms. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Patches,
Yes.
Ms. Lankowski,
Yes.
Mr. Bryce,
Yes.
and Mr. Schulman.
Yes,
Unanimous.
okay, good. We'll move on. Next
Thank
item is, oh,
I want to
apologies.
thank the commission for your time. Thank you.
2024-36 CAM, Joanne Smith, 281 East Avenue, District 3, Block 42, Lot 22. Renovate and construct 2 additions and deck to a single-family residence. Report and recommend action. Attorney Secchi?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Liz Secchi. I'm a partner at Carmody, Torrance, Sandak, and Hennessy, 1055 Washington Boulevard in Stamford, and I represent the property owner, Joanne Smith. Present tonight are Nick Renzulli of NAR Design, he's the project architect, and Tessa Duquette. She is a professional engineer with TJ Engineering, and she is the project civil engineer. The applicant is Joanne Smith, as I mentioned. The property is at 281 East Avenue. It is bordered by East Avenue to the north, the Mill Pond to the south, and other residentially developed properties to the east and west. If Nick or Tessa could screen share the survey, that would be helpful. The property is currently zoned CD1S, but it was C residence at the time that the variance application was filed, and that is what it is being presented to you under that C resident zone regulation. Variance was filed and were granted by the Zoning Board of Appeals with respect to the front setback and parking in the front setback. And it relates to a proposal to do some renovations to the existing 2-story residential structure and add an addition to the east, to the north, and to the south. We'll get into that in just a minute. The variances were granted about 2 months ago. There was no opposition or commentary from neighbors, no questions. They did not appear at the meeting, even though they were notified. The only comments we received were from Diane Cece, who lives a bit distant from this property. The height, number of stories, coverage, front, side and rear setbacks are all compliant. The reason we are before you is that the property is located within the coastal area management zone and directly next to the mill pond. In fact, about a half of the property is submerged under the mill pond as the property owner's property extends into the mill pond, the actual property itself. FEMA flood elevation for this is 14.0 feet for finished floor. The size of the lot is about 8,800 square feet or 0.2 of an acre thereabout. As I mentioned before, there is an existing 2-story residential structure constructed around 1930. There is very little off-street parking. So the proposal is to add an addition to the south for a 2-car garage and a master suite above, and to the north to add a dining room, and then reconfigure interior space in the dwelling to make it more conducive to today's living. So if the site plan could be screen shared, that would be great. All of the construction is landward of the coastal jurisdiction line. All of the construction would be at or above the 14.0 FEMA flood elevation plus 2 feet, so it'd be completely FEMA compliant. And that's generally the overview. So perhaps at this point, I can turn it over to Tessa to walk you through the site plan, stormwater management. We have received sign-offs from Public Works, TMP, South Norwalk Electric and Water, and the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, and they should be part of the file. Comments were received from Amelia Williams, and I believe we've responded to all of them. But at this point, if Tessa could take over and screen share her plan, and she'll be followed by Nick, who can walk you through the architectural plans. Any questions you have of me, of course, I'm happy to answer them, or any of us will answer the questions you may have throughout the presentation. Tessa, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Good evening, commission members. I'm trying to share my plan. And, let me see. Okay. I'm a civil and environmental engineer with Teaching Engineering LLC. I worked on stormwater management, soil and erosion controls, and coastal resources aspects for this project. So I'll begin, I guess, with the coastal resources. So this line, if everyone could see, signifies, I guess, the DP coastal jurisdiction line. And we got a response from DP already. We submitted coastal site plan application. So they consider that there is no adverse impacts based on whatever the proposal, whatever is the proposal. And the only thing that they were concerned that there are two seawalls, that these seawalls would not be disturbed or reconstructed, which there is no such attempt to do that. So then there is this flood line. So which is the 100-year flood zone. So below, within the 100-year flood zone, there is no regrading or not much disturbance is proposed, other than, of course, Caltech units, but it would not change the grade. We also, as a temporary measures, we are proposing silt fence and a row of hay bales in more disturbed areas. And when it comes to stormwater management, we did a pre and post conditions analysis, and that showed that we needed to retain, we needed to use 3 Caltech units to retain peak runoff rates. So from new roof areas, runoff will be conveyed to the Caltech units and retained for the 100-year storm event. So basically, based on analysis, there will be no even overflow. So all this water will be totally infiltrated into the ground. In terms of the driveway, so gravel driveway for existing conditions will be changed with a pervious asphalt driveway. Again, that usually provides some sort of infiltration. Then as in terms of more permanent erosion, soil erosion, and control measures, there will be a lot of plans proposed, but these are shown on architect's landscape plan. So I'm going to allow him to talk a bit about it. Well, that's pretty much it. If any questions, please ask. Like in terms of stormwater management.
All right, if not, let's move on.
Okay.
At this point, if Nick Renzulli could come on and share his plan, we can wrap up our presentation and answer any questions you may have.
Yes, hi, my name is Nicholas Renzulli. Thank you for your time tonight. I am the owner operator of NAR Architecture Design, now Design Build. I am the project manager and the architectural designer for Joanne Smith's project. And I just want to go over, Tessa, can you stop sharing.
Oh. Yep.
Thank you. So I would just like to take you through the house as it exists now. It's 25 by 19. That's the current footprint. When you walk into the house on the first floor.
I'm sorry, Mr. Renzulli, can you make that just a little bit larger?
Sure. Let's see.
Thank you.
Yep. So the first floor is slightly elevated above grade. And when you walk in the house, you are confronted with a staircase right in your view. The small footprint doesn't allow for an adequate kitchen and a sizable family space and a dining space. So the first floor, and I'm about to go to the second floor. This is the existing second floor. So the roof lines in the back are very low, 57 wall height, and in the front it's also 57. So for a living space up on the second floor, it's just not adequate. So I will go to the proposed drawings. This is the first floor. We basically have an open concept. As soon as you walk in, you are greeted with the lovely pond. We have a proposed single-story kitchen addition on the northern side, which we saw to be more of a peaceful side. It's the side of the lot with the largest lawn. And it's also, because this is a one-way road, keeping this a one-story, we felt was critical, just to not block out too much of the sky. Because the lot is so narrow, parking is a major factor on this street in general. And we designed the garage in such a way that 2 cars can safely turn around on the proposed driveway and safely pull out into the street. So that was a major part of the driveway. And because the driveway is so pinched between the front setback for the variance that we asked for and the floodplain, it allowed for a narrow garage, which did not allow for a lot of storage. So we added a storage space on the side. The staircase obviously became its own tower. We took it out of the shape. And the second floor, when you come up the stairs, we reconfigured the existing second floor to be a bit more square. We are raising the shed dormer in the back for more adequate head height. And the laundry is currently in the basement. The basement stair on these 1930 homes are quite treacherous. So bringing them up to the second floor was a huge advantage for us. When you cross the stair hall to the primary suite, it is a good sized bedroom with all the amenities of a suite. Elevations. So this right here is the existing home, which we love the large overhangs and we love the brackets that signify the craftsman look. So we tried to take that and add it to the architecture of the garage and of the single-story kitchen shape. And that's the rear elevation. This is the kitchen elevation, which you drive in on. And that's all. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Nick, could you show the plan that has the landscaping?
Yes.
Thank you.
So this is our landscape plan. A large, a priority from Amelia was to extend this buffer all the way across, which is just going to look lovely. Originally, we had it stopping at the building, but she requested it to go the full distance. So we did that and we agreed. This plan down here shows what trees exist on site and what trees are going to remain and what trees are going to be removed. So there's 2 trees on the northern side up here. Those are going to remain. There are 3 trees in the front, which are going to remain as well. The only 2 trees that are going to be taken down are these 2 plants here that encroach into the balcony above. And these are the native species that we are looking to upholster the shoreline with.
Question for you on one of the trees that's proposed to be removed. It's kind of hard to tell from this, like how substantial those trees are, and it appears to be on like a pretty steep bank. Is there a concern about removing that tree and it's then therefore loosening its roots and having erosion on this steep bank?
Well, that's always a concern for ours. And I think the type of system that we have south of that along the shore will help that. And our silt fence should handle, if you would like that area protected in such a way, we are absolutely all ears for that. It doesn't really get steep also until you get past the 14-foot line. Then it starts to really go down.
Thank you. I think I also saw something in the memo about the AC units. Is that something that the team has taken a look at to readjust those?
They're now in a compliant location.
Thank
They
you.
were not before, but they're now in a compliant location behind the setback.
These lines represent the allowable buildable area, just for reference of what can be done on the site.
Sorry, Mr. Renzulli, is that the solid with the 2 little dashes line that you point out?
The AC pads, yes.
No, the buildable area, it's curved. It starts.
Right.
Yeah, okay, so that's the buildable line.
Yes.
Okay.
Long and narrow.
I'm not sure if you or one of the other applicants could answer this question, but just trying to get a sense of any potential flooding. Has the property ever flooded, or do you know if there was ever a FEMA claim filed by the property prior to the current owner's ownership?
I do not know if there's been a claim filed by a prior owner, but the area where the house is currently located and where the additions are going to be placed is certainly at a much higher elevation than the mill pond. And the house, once it's renovated and the 2 additions, will be at the required FEMA minimum flood elevation plus 2 feet.
And it seems like patio below it says 14.7 and the flood elevation is at 14, so it is above flood elevation. So it would not be possible to flood.
You never know. But so to your knowledge, no flooding there. And then the mill pond really isn't tidal unless there's rather like a storm surge. Is that accurate? Or is the mill pond tidal? Let me rephrase that.
I guess it is considered as a tidal wetlands.
It is, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Tide definitely comes in and out.
Okay, thank you, Anna. I wasn't sure.
Tammy, I can also clarify that it is tidal wetlands and tidal waters due to the elevation, but it is landward of the LIMWA line, so the limit of wave action, which is an important distinction in flood zones.
Okay, thanks, Amelia.
Amelia, I would like to hear your comments on the project.
Sure. So there were some revised plans submitted earlier today that addressed most of my comments, like the AC units being relocated and the vegetative buffer is something that I would be fine with as staff. I didn't get a chance to update the memo or resolution, which we can do shortly, but I'm comfortable with the landscaping plan as it is now. And I was a little bit concerned about the coverage and the increase of impervious surface, but the applicant had indicated that they would be treating all stormwater in site, including from existing roof areas. So that addresses that concern. And probably the biggest outstanding issue for me is the determination of the boundary between flood zones. In non-coastal flood zones, the boundary usually follows the topography, so the 14-foot elevation contour, and it's not shown on the plans. The plans reference the flood line as being taken from the firm panel and to see note 8, but note 8 references the landscaping plan. So I'm mostly looking for confirmation of the flood zone just to ensure that the structure is not in the flood zone. But other than that, I think the applicant has addressed most of my comments.
How, if at all, does that issue get resolved?
Well, if the applicant can provide me any sort of argument or documentation or show me how they determined the flood line, I think that would be sufficient. It is, from a CAM perspective, the flood line being moved a couple of feet isn't a huge issue. I mean, I think we should still consider, even if the structure's not in a flood zone, just in and directly adjacent to flood hazard zone should have the same, if not similar, consideration. But more from a zoning standpoint, it's a larger issue if they need to make the structure flood compliant or not. So I think it would be a great thing for the applicant to look into and provide staff with some information, mostly so it doesn't become a problem further down the road when they're trying to close the permit for the additions. And if it's discovered that the structure isn't a flood zone and they need to make it flood compliant, it's much easier to do that at the start of construction and not at the end.
Thank you.
If I may add, I think what we could do, and I would suspect this would satisfy Ms. Williams, is Tess Ducate could work with the surveyor to make sure that the information is consistent and accurate. This we will in large measure depend upon the surveyor to provide the correct flood lines on the plan. And I think that will address the concern. And if the plan has to be modified in accordance with what Ms. Williams has just mentioned, we're happy to do that.
Okay.
I also had a conversation with Gregory about this because while we were putting the plans together and while we were determining where the foundation would go, he did bring up which line is determined. So I do know that he heavily looked into that, and that line comes from his documents, his stamped sealed documents.
But we can provide more information or greater confirmation for Ms. Williams so that her level of comfort is reached and she's satisfied that the plans are accurate and the information is sufficient.
Okay. Amelia, is that something that we should include in the resolution, or is it simply something that will be done between you and the applicant?
I did include 2 conditions because typically when a structure is in a flood zone, we'll add conditions to require flood certifications and the FEMA elevation certificate at the end if a structure is proposed to be made flood compliant. And those are requirements of obtaining a zoning permit, but we usually include them as conditions in any commission approvals. So I've added those, but with stating that if they're determined to be in a flood zone, that those conditions would be applicable.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Anything else, Attorney Suchi?
I have nothing further to share with you unless you have questions of Ms. Ducate or Mr. Renzulli.
Are there any? All right, seeing none, let's pull up the resolution.
I would suspect that the resolution conditions with reference to the plans will have to be updated to the date of the plans, either today for NAR architecture or for, I think there was an update on the plan from TJ Engineering.
Yeah, I think C and D can be updated. I can check for the exact dates as well that were received today, but I think they might be dated yesterday.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, and then there's, if I update the landscaping plan, I can remove the staff approval condition. Or we
Okay.
can leave it as is and staff can just approve the plan that was received today. And then the two highlighted conditions is the language for if the structure is determined to be in a flood zone.
Amelia, for condition 7, is that met by the hay bales that are proposed?
No, the hay bales
Okay.
is more for the silt fence and preventing any sediment from getting into Mill Pond, but installing silt fence or just construction fence is just to protect any trees from potential equipment, so nothing
Oh.
scrapes them.
Yeah, I apologize. I read the first part of 7 and asked the question without reading the second part. Thank you. Yep.
I don't know if 13 is necessary since the revised plan has extended that buffer, but if you decide that it needs to stay, that's fine.
Yeah, 13 and 8 are both the documents submitted today would satisfy both 13 and 8, so we can either remove them and just update the revision dates in the first condition, or we can leave them, but just know that the plan submitted already satisfy that.
Right.
And
I'd be inclined to remove them and update the dates.
Sounds good. I can do that right now.
And does number 11 pertain to all surfaces, or does that include the driveway? Because I think it's important. I read somewhere in the application that they're going to use the permeable pavement, but is that, I didn't see it noted in any one of these items.
It's just in general, trying to see it because it's not requiring it. It's just saying that it be used to the maximum extent possible because it is something that I think is beneficial for properties near the coast. But if you want to specify anything, I can definitely add that.
Well, I think it's important to add it in the driveway because that, I know it's a little bit more expensive, that pervious pavement, but it really does work.
So pervious surface be used for the driveway and to the maximum extent possible, or just for the driveway?
I think both, if, you know, one of my other fellow commissioners feel, but I think including both is advantageous.
Agreed. I think the applicant's okay with that too. Like that's what they're planning on doing. So good to keep it in here. Yeah.
Right, make it specific.
And then, yeah, I think that was the end. And if it's okay with you, I'll just update the site plan and landscape plan revision dates shortly when I can take a look at it.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, can we take this down and can I have a motion to approve the revised document?
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Tammy has moved
I can second.
and Chapin has seconded.
That was Hector, but I'll also second.
Oh, sorry. Any questions or comments? All right, if not, Steve, let's do a roll call.
Sure. Ms. Jordan Byron,
Yes.
Ms. Tabachnik,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Patches,
Yes.
Ms. Wells,
Yes.
Ms. Langallis,
Yes.
Ms. Lenkowski,
Yes.
Mr. Bryce,
Yes.
and Mr. Schulman.
Yes.
Okay, unanimous again.
Thank
Okay.
you, everyone, for your time tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody's getting bigger as people are dropping off as we complete items on the agenda. 19-05 SP St. George Greek Orthodox Church, 238 West Rocks Road, bond released request. Steve, you want to just, this I assume is they finished the work and they'd like us to release the bond.
You said it very succinct.
This is a standard matter we deal with all the time. Motion to release the bond? Mr. Hodges has moved. Second,
I'll second.
okay, Mr. Bryce seconds. With a show of hands, all those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous also. All right, we've dealt with, for the time being, with Philo Street. Then let's come back to daycare uses in residential zones. We had asked the staff to do some further research. So I'm going to, Michelle, you were the one, I believe, that did the research?
Yes, sure. So to reiterate, the research I've done, so we came to a consensus that the state legislation for the kindergarten start date didn't really have any anticipated impact on childcare. Reaching out to existing daycares, we did see that there was an infant demand, and that was backed up by the child care coordinator for the city. She definitely sees a lot of people inquiring about infant care. When reaching out about expansion within family and group, or family to get to group, it was really mixed bag of where the person was in their stage of their business. So I kind of came to consensus that that was like a 50-50. And then my other point, I think that kind of prohibits people from wanting to take that step to go to group or child daycare license, is that the state requirements are very stringent. So for a family daycare to want to go to a group daycare license with the state, it's a lot more intense. So they would almost rather be a child daycare center if like they're really going to make that leap and put the investment and time in. And so with that being said, I think we can certainly put some language together to see what you guys think about having childcare centers within residential zones. There's different ways you can do it by capping the amount of children that are in the residential zones for childcare, or what you previously had in your prior zoning was allowing child daycare centers within like a church or a museum. So that is another option to put back into the regulations. But that's kind of the high level research and synopsis that we've done. See what you guys think.
I'd like to clarify, the question is not about families expanding to group. It's about either group expanding to center or just a new program establishing a small center, you know, between 13 and 18 or whatever the group decides in a residential zone. I just wanted to clarify that.
Right. And I think also like an idea was that there were already 50 plus family daycares within Norwalk who potentially could turn into group, which allows a little more kids within their facility, but it doesn't require them to be a daycare center, and they could function in a residential zone as a group, which could fill a potential demand for infant care or other age groups that might be needing to fill the gap.
Michelle, I'd like to know what the numbers look like. If an existing daycare wants to go to the next stage in terms of the size of, and I assume that means the number of children they can care for, what are we talking about?
I could pull up my old memo, outlined all the definitions for each one that shows the
It's
brackets.
just anything above 12 brings a group into a center. Anything above 12 makes it a center. And currently, according to zoning, centers aren't allowed in residential zones. That's not an issue for OEC.
And was there any type of consensus, Michelle, that you found from talking to the assorted daycare providers in the city of what was needed the most?
it was really diverse. Like some people were ending their business, other people, I think what I heard the most was infant care was the huge demand, looking for people needing care for infants was definitely but depending on who I called, some people were very small scale. They had 2 kids and they wanted to be 2 kids and they're comfortable with it. And other people, you know, wanted to expand, but they didn't have the finances to, or their house, you know, was too small to have more kids, things like that. But in regards to age groupings, yeah, it's infants, a huge
Well,
demand.
infants do turn into toddlers in a very short time, you know. So if they're coming in the pipeline, and I don't have any scientific evidence, but other than my own observation, I think during the pandemic, there were a lot of babies born, and they're out there and they're going to be, you know, coming in the pipeline very soon. And maybe that's why the demand for infant care is so high.
There's infants in centers and groups at all levels. I forget if I said this last time, but this is very similar to the small scale multifamily housing issue where there's a need and looking to remove or flex zoning restrictions where it's possible. You know, Austin, Texas, that is a model for a lot of this forward thinking stuff, removed all zoning restrictions on daycare location and capacity.
Personally, I don't understand why we restrict it. You know, if someone wants to open a group center in a residential zone, it depends on the property. You know, how much space, how much parking, is there a reasonable place for drop off and pickup, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if it can fit and function, why would we not want to have it in a residential zone?
I agree with that, Galen, and especially having it in the residential zone would enable more parents to, you know, walk towards the care center, right? I don't think parents, I don't have kids, but I presume parents don't love packing up the car to bring kids wherever they need to go. And so being able to walk with them to the care center, I imagine would be ideal.
So I don't think it's limited in zoning. I think the facility itself limits it or doesn't limit it.
The facility itself absolutely limits it, and it's very, very typical. It's not Norwalk. Very typical that zoning regulations place centers in commercial zones, but it's
why?
It's right. It's a little unclear if zoning does it because that's where they already were, and like we don't want those big centers in residential zones, or like it's a chicken and the egg. But it's really about the numbers. You've got 0 to 6, 6 to 12, and 12 to unlimited. And if you're going to go 12 to unlimited, you're going to generally want to go bigger, right? Because volume leads to more profit. Then you're going to need a bigger space. You're going to need a commercial type space. You definitely don't, most of the time, want something with 150 kids on a residential street anyway. You're not looking at residents. So it just becomes, I think, a circular thing from talking to a lot of different people involved in this. But it doesn't
becomes a
have to be
school
that
of
way.
that.
What?
Then it becomes a school, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most schools are in residential zones.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think your proposal strikes a good balance for us to, you know, at least take a step in this direction, to maybe not open it up to be unlimited in residential zones, but allows us to kind of open it up a little bit and see if there is, you know, this demand, and you know, gives us that special permit ability to look at it. I'm open to that, and also like you know, if there are other proposals, you know, I'm curious to hear. But you know, I think 18, you know, is a good way to kind of like fill in that gap, and we can maybe try that for a year. And if there's demand to open it up wider, we can look and evaluate that. I don't know. I don't know if others have thoughts on that proposal.
I'm just thinking about it, any other use in a residential zone, that the residents themselves, just as the residents didn't want two-family housing in single-family zones, they may feel the same way about having daycare,
Yeah.
larger daycare centers in their neighborhoods. I have no way of knowing how to judge that.
Unless they have children.
Wasn't that what the public hearing process for a zone regulation amendment would entail? And then if it, it might be that everybody hates it and it gets knocked down or scaled back like the 2-family thing, or it might be that some sort of a special permit passes, and then with each special permit, there's another public hearing for the, direct neighbors in that neighborhood. But it's kind of similar to ADUs, where I wasn't here at the time, but you all passed this thing to try to let's make a little more room here, and we don't know how much impact it's going to be, and we've only had like 5 of them. Maybe we tweak it more, maybe we don't, maybe the need isn't there, maybe the desire isn't there.
Well, I think what my concern suggests to me is that we move cautiously, that we don't open it wide open, that we open it a little way, judge it, see if experience suggests we should open it further, or leave it the way it is, or actually change it. I'm not opposed to making some change. I just don't want to make radical change.
The only, Lou, that like what Michelle said, the burden of going from like a very small to the next step it's very expensive. I think you're less likely to get takers on that than if it was opened a little wider, so that people with appropriate properties, big properties, could consider it. There are very few properties that would probably work for a larger daycare center.
Well, why don't we take a look at some language so that we can at least discuss among ourselves what we think the impact would be.
Michelle, do we have any idea how many churches or, religious facilities either do or don't have? And to me, that's where you get your larger, but daycare, they're nursery schools, and the state requirements for becoming a nursery school daycare, they're very stringent. And so, if we're super stringent, then that's not going to have a positive impact to increase it if there's a need in our community. We have a nursery school at my church, and they're looking to expand, but the state has such a massive amount of requirements that it's almost impossible for them to expand on the church campus. So I'm just bringing that up because, that's where I think the larger opportunities lie, not in somebody's backyard where they're going to, put a 20 by 20 addition on their house to have a daycare center, wouldn't think.
But Tammy, that's not going to change regardless of any action we take.
No, but if we make it so difficult for people to expand, and I'm just saying that it's already very difficult at the state level to become one of these places, that if we make it really restrictive, then it, in all likelihood, it wouldn't happen. We wouldn't have anybody that wants to do it because it just becomes too onerous.
Right. And then you have this gap in supply and demand, because demand becomes larger than what's available. And then you have people who try to fill in that gap illegally.
Well, right now we don't allow it at all. So that I'm not averse to what Tammy and Galen are saying, that maybe it would actually need to be a bigger change for people to take advantage of it. But just remembering that right now it's not allowed at all. So I think any changes
proceed with caution, but
opens
don't
up opportunity.
Yeah.
But I'd be very interested if it went to public hearing. Well, if anybody pays attention, but also if people, parents, daycare owners, potential daycare owners, it's the sort of thing where like you can learn a lot from the people who are currently operating things, but they may not be interested in changing what they do, but it might be other people who aren't getting into the business or aren't taking steps who might want to.
Steve, would it be a bad idea, or would it be feasible for us to kind of take the temperature of the community, other, in addition to what Michelle has already done?
Yeah, well, how were you thinking of doing that?
Well, like Anna's saying, a public,
So I was talking about a public, if we put forward a zoning text amendment change proposal, similar to what I sort of penciled out there last time we discussed this, but obviously better because zoning staff know how to write these things. There would be a required public hearing, public comment period, and hopefully hear from the public. You're thinking of a forum, a non-official forum, Tammy?
I guess, yeah. Well, if we put a proposal out there, I mean, the city would be the applicant. I don't know, that doesn't quite work with our process, but
The
I'll
city
let to
does it all the
Steve and
time.
your staff to come up with the idea.
They do that all the time. The city proposes a zoning text amendment because they want to change something in the regulations.
I think the first step ought to be drafting something that we can discuss among ourselves before we put it out to the public. We'd simply have it as a discussion item on one of our upcoming agendas. And then if we agree, we move it to public comment.
I'm in favor of that. And I don't think we want to delay it, because if there are all these babies, pretty soon, they won't be babies anymore.
I think in terms of delay, what I'm suggesting is simply add a couple of weeks to moving this forward. Because instead of putting it out to the public, we're meeting on it, and after that, putting it out to the public. So it's not a significant delay.
Is a draft of proposed regulation, and then they come back to us and we discuss their proposed draft regulation. And if we all agree, then we put it out as a proposal to the public and
Right.
hold a public hearing.
And we don't even have to, frankly, all agree. A majority needs to agree.
Right.
And I'm under no illusion that a tweak in zoning is going to solve the childcare crisis. From talking to Mary Oster, one of the biggest barriers with infant and toddler care capacity is the use of vouchers for certain programs that have to be 60% voucher, and then that changes the ratio of available spots. From talking with multiple providers, it's finding staff or having the space. And then when it comes to parents, their individual barriers to finding the right place for their child. But I just hate to see something unnecessarily maybe limit opportunity in an area where we know there's a need.
Well,
and I really appreciate
we've got at least 3 members who feel pretty strongly about this. Anna, Chapin, and Galen. Anna, do you think you could put together a draft, share it with Chapin and Galen, and then pass it on to the staff?
And Tammy felt strongly about it too.
That's fine. The 4 of you want to be involved, that's fine. Then pass it on to the staff for proper bureaucratic writing, and then bring it back to the commission so we can discuss it. And again, if we agree, put it out for public comment.
That's fine with me.
Chapin, Galen, Tammy?
Sure.
Okay, we've got a committee working on it. Good. Approval of the minutes of June 26th. We actually have 2 sets of minutes, one being the special meeting. Why don't we, I'll ask for a motion to approve those minutes first. So only those who are at the special meeting can vote on those. Is that a motion to approve, Tammy?
Yes, motion to approve.
Okay, second. Darius this time. All those in favor? Raise of hands.
I'm abstaining. I wasn't here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, those are approved. Second, the regular meeting on June 26th. Motion to approve?
Wait, did you just say the 26th?
That's what it says here in front of me. I have 26th, the special meeting.
Oh, both. Yeah, sorry, Lou. My apologies.
Yeah, and 26th, the regular meeting.
Yep, my apologies.
That's okay. Motion to approve the minutes. Okay, Tammy has moved. There's Hector has seconded. All those in favor? Okay, approved. And then we didn't have the meeting on the 27th, did or did?
Yeah, we did.
We did,
did.
right. We just didn't discuss
blur.
the item that we were supposed to that evening. Okay, motion to approve the minutes of June 27th. Darius moves. Is there a second? And Anna has seconded. Again, all those in favor?
Abstaining again.
Abstaining again. Yep.
Okay, any opposed? And we've got the abstentions. Okay, that's it. Comments of the director?
Kind of just picking up on your daycare discussion, before the end of the month, we will get you a set of recommended edits for the regs. We're working through things. So I think our rough timeline of thinking is we'll get you those edits. We can talk about them at your August meetings. And maybe we can do a public hearing in October to get, feedback on the changes we proposed, as well as hear about other things. And, I think that would be a good time to introduce your daycare discussion or the daycare concept. The one thing that I think is going to be, we've passed a series of changes in response to items that we flagged as problematic. There's, one other area, or, the related areas that are not working well are dealing with some of the changes that went in for the single family zoning in terms of garage requirements, setback for the driveways, and then a couple of the height calculations in the flood zone. We put something in that addressed one concern in terms of getting that extra story of height, which really elevated some of the buildings along the water. But now we've gone so restrictive that they can't build a true 2.5-story building. So we're going to try to come back to something more in the middle. So we'll fix it. It's just going to take a little bit of massaging.
Okay. Any comments by the commissioners?
I have a
Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a couple. Sorry, I've been holding on to these as we've had some late meetings over the past few months. I'll be as brief as possible. So maybe this is related to the edits that you just mentioned, Steve, but I'm curious to see if there's anything we can do in regard to the mailings of like notifying neighbors. It seems that we require those notifications to go to the owners, but if the units are rented out or the owners aren't there, I'm curious if we can require that a mailing goes to the address, since the address is known and can be just like current resident. And maybe we don't require necessarily getting a receipt of recipient receipt, but that it was at least sent to that address, because that address should be deliverable. Curious if you have any initial thoughts on that.
That might be something we could do in addition to, but I think I'd have
Yes.
to read the statutory language that the certified copy needs to go to the owner. I have to read back to the statute, but that might be something I would say add to. So you could send like maybe a non-certified mail copy to the current tenant, or we'll see if they would open it, but I get your point.
I don't
I
have
agree.
any objection to what Chapin is suggesting, but I will say that on our public hearing tonight, the sign that was in front of that house that we were considering was enormous, and you couldn't miss it. I think that is already a tremendous improvement in terms of notifying the neighborhood of what's going on.
I agree on both points. I love the sign. Like, I wanted to start cheering. But also on larger properties, that same size sign is gonna look a lot smaller. And I think we can do both. And I think bringing renters into this process on a lot of different levels is so important. I really like that idea, Chapin.
Okay.
We do have a tweak that we're going to try to recommend for the sign, because the way the size of the sign is, it's hard to fit all the letters with the letter height requirements. So we have a tweak we're recommending. So like the certain words will have a certain font size, and then other words will have a lower font size so they can fit the actual requirements onto the sign.
Can you do a QR code instead of, I forget if what you have right now is the Zoom link or the application page link, but people walking past these days and age are more likely to actually be able to access something if there's a QR on it.
Yeah, maybe we always run into complaints about doing anything too technology related, because then they say not everybody's got a smartphone, and then we get grief for that.
Thank you. Makes sense.
Yeah, on a note of that lettering, that was something I was thinking about, how the URL does wrap around. I feel like the URL could be smaller compared to some of the other letters on there. Is someone who's interested will pull over and take a closer read. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if somebody's truly interested, they'll seek out what the public hearing is about.
Yep. And I agree with what you said, Steve, about mailing to current residents in addition to owners. I think we should still keep the certified mail to owners and add in the to current resident. I also wonder if we can extend it across like the railroad right of way that came up as an issue on a recent application. And so want to make sure that neighbors who are on the other side of a railroad right of way, also get that notification. So that's something else that I wanted to call out. And then moving on from the notification piece, something we've seen in a couple of recent applications was on pedestrian counts. And I can't remember if we explicitly require that in our regulations. I had it on my to-do list to go and look, but would like to explore us requiring that as part of a traffic studies to include the pedestrian counts if we don't already. And sorry, I meant to do that homework ahead of today's meeting and didn't get to it, so I apologize.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm assuming there's not anything that prohibits us from requiring that. So, but yeah, that's an interesting one.
Cool. Yeah, it maybe is most applicable in our more walkable areas, but I think could also be interesting in areas that maybe lack some of that infrastructure to see if it is something. Like on the Costco application, it came up that do a lot of people bike or walk to Costco? Like, it would be interesting to have that information to help us make a more informed decision. The other was from tonight, seeing some of the pictures that Attorney Blank showed. It seems like there might be a couple things we want to follow up on there from a zoning violation perspective along Reynolds Street. I'm sure you and staff saw that. So, and then someone brought to my attention that during a tree warden hearing for the Sono rail station, that there were some plans presented that changed the 1517 Chestnut application that we saw, changed up the traffic routing through that area. And so I'm not sure if that's something that came back to you guys or is something that needs to come back to us to review, but someone was saying that they had put in 3 lanes and basically made it through traffic from, I'm now blanking on road names, but cutting through that parking lot instead of what I remember, which was an island in the middle with maybe a traffic circle and having 2 exits onto Monroe. So I'm not sure if that's something that's available or sorry, that's something that's familiar to you guys, that any changes to that site plan, but I just wanted to flag that as someone brought it up to me and wanted to pass that along.
Yeah, I think you're talking about Railroad Place itself, the city's parcel that accesses the station. Yeah, I know they're talking about some changes there. I don't think anything's been finalized yet, but we did talk to TMP about having to make sure proper approvals were obtained. So I'll follow back up on that.
Thanks. That's all I had. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Chapin.
Yeah, I didn't want to extend our late meetings, so thank you.
Any other comments from other commissioners? All right, if not, I will just mention that my understanding is, Steve, our second July meeting is being canceled. So we get a couple of weeks off, and our next meeting will be August 7th.
Almost a whole month.
My God, what are we going to do with ourselves?
I
Don't
think we
jinx
made
it.
the hours.
All right, with that, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
Okay, there were 4 hands up.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned. Special thanks to Amelia and Michelle for helping us out this evening. Good night,
Thank you.
everyone.
Good night.
Right.
Thank you.